This is Center Stage, putting lawyers in the spotlight by highlighting attorneys and other industry experts to help take your law firm to the next level. Hey everyone, and welcome to Center Stage. I am your host, John Henson, and this week I wanted to talk about an aspect of your overall marketing strategy that may not usually get the attention it deserves, and that is your PR, your media relations and that side of things. And regardless of how big or small your market is, whether you're in a 50,000 person town or you're in a huge metro area, I think you really can benefit from just building relationships with media outlets, whether it's your local newspaper, maybe a local TV station, whatever the case is. And so to help us sort of do that this week, I have brought in a PR expert, Mickie Kennedy, to help us talk about that. So Mickie, thank you so much for taking some time with us today.
Oh, you're welcome. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So before we jump in, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your background? How do you help people out?
Okay. So, my background is I'm a creative writer. I did a MFA in creative writing with an emphasis in poetry, and sort of through being a server, realized that standing on my feet for 10 hours a day wasn't for me. So I went to work for a telecom startup in DC 25 years ago, and I was introduced to press releases and had to write them and fax them. And we had a state-of-the-art fax machine that held 100 numbers, and we had to reach 200 journalists. So I was programming them, sending, and then hitting delete to all those numbers and putting another 100 in. So It was a very unglamorous job. But the thing I saw was a lot of journalists started to call and say, could you email me the press release? Because we published traffic and statistics, a lot of data, and they felt it was easier to cut and paste in Microsoft Word. So light bulb went off and said, email seems a natural evolution to press releases, and then was all being done largely through faxing because you couldn't afford the news wires to send out through them. So I spent about a year developing relationships with journalists and launched with almost 10,000 journalists in my database almost 23 years ago. And it's just grown over time. The Newswire reached out to me over the years and said, hey, you should also send your releases out through us. And I'm like, hey, you charge $1,000 to move a press release nationally. And my clients are paying me a couple $100. So what we did is we finally found a solution that works so that all of my clients receive a custom national distribution over a Newswire and gets that access plus the email distribution that we've always provided. And basically, I'm there to serve as and help small businesses, startups, entrepreneurs, attorneys, authors, basically anybody who's trying to establish themselves and get their name and reputation out there. And the one thing that happens is when you get articles written about you, it's a big credibility boost, and it looks good for you. I always recommend that my customers share their successes on their website, take screenshots of media mentions, and also let your social media know, let your customers know they want to share in your celebrations as well. And they see that as really cool that this, in your case, an attorney that's being profiled or spotlighted for a particular topic or subject, that enhances and solidifies the relationship a little bit more and makes you, really, I think it makes it easier for you to convert them and for people to reach out to you when there is a need.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's start with the absolute basics. What exactly is a press release? Why should attorneys kind of have these readily available, or have, someone like you be writing them up? How exactly do they work?
Right. So basically, a press release is a third-party announcement. Generally, if you use first person in anything, it's going to be in a quote where you say something really fascinating. We hope. Right. You don't want the quote to be a throwaway or something that could be easily paraphrased. It's your opportunity to shine, because press releases are basically pretty bland and simplistic. The real meat and potatoes behind it is the strategy, what it is you're announcing, why it's important and relevant to a potential audience. And if you can sort of crack the code of what people want to read about and how you fit into that, then you can reverse engineer press releases that do get media pickup and do result in successes.
Awesome. So whether it's, law firm kind of maybe writing it on them for themselves, or they hire, someone like you to write it for them, what sort of tips do you have, or hacks, or however you want to frame it, for making a press release really good so that it actually ends up getting picked up?
Right. I would say it's less on the writing of the release or even the format of the release. It's more of what it is you're announcing. And I had mentioned strategy before. It really comes down to that, because my first book that I wrote was about writing the best press release. And I believe that if you wrote the perfect press release, you would get media attention. And then I would just set up great press releases for clients and watch them fail again and again. And I'm just like, but they were so well written. And what I realized is what they were announcing didn't matter. If you've got a new website, or you made a charitable donation, all the different things that people sort of solidify in a press release. A new hire is one of them. We have a new, associate in HR. Nobody cares about that, or the people that care is very small. Maybe your local paper, maybe one key trade publication. In those instances, you don't want to use a paid service because it's a squandered opportunity. What you should be announcing are things that are more strategic and make basically have you being the news. And one of those that I've championed because it works so well is to do a survey or study within your industry or community. If you can author the study and get it out there, and a lot of media will be really receptive to it. For example, it could be regional or an area survey in your area about how certain legal concepts are dealt with by people. If it's just a survey of community members, it could be, who do you go to for legal advice? Do you have someone who reviews your contracts? Do you have a will? Things like that. You could also do it right now. With the pandemic in mind, are there questions about the pandemic that have a legal application that you could ask some really relevant questions? You then get the survey out there. You can put it on community social media. Hopefully you have a customer base that's willing to complete the survey. Generally, if you get 100 or more respondents, the media is okay with it, especially if it's local or regional that you're doing. And you might be able to partner with some websites that have better traffic than you to say, hey, could you tweet this or share it on your Facebook or social media or Instagram, just to get a few more people completing the survey, so you have a more healthier number of people. But then you would just get it out there, and you could reach out to local journalists as well that cover your industry, establish a relationship, say, I just published a survey, here's the results. In those instances, you may not need a press release if you're just doing it yourself, just having the survey and maybe showcasing some bullets of what was the most interesting results and a couple of quotes by you of why those quotes were interesting. And that's how it works. With us, we're more nationally minded. We can do the local saturation, but we really are looking for like national media attention for our clients. And newspapers, TV, radio, all different segments of trade publications and magazines and things like that. You utilize the newswire. So there's lots of different paths an article could take as a result of your press release. But one on a survey or study on a really interesting topic, generally gets, I see with our clients on average 12 to 18 articles, original articles, not your press release replicated on a website, that syndication SEO, BS crap that doesn't matter. You get 2 visitors from that, but real bona fide articles that appear on real websites with real rich content that was written by a journalist. That's the real goal that we're looking for, and that happens if you have something that's newsworthy, and you just want to make sure that you're being strategic with what you're releasing, and trying to reverse engineer something that a community or audience might be receptive in hearing.
Yeah. I mean, you made a couple of great points there. I mean, I think, the survey idea is such a great idea for, especially if you have a bigger email list. I mean, that's something that we're kind of doing right now where, we have a weekly email newsletter that goes out. I have a question of the week there, and we're just compiling all of this data in the hopes that we can release like a really big annual report and just have all kinds of good data and good bits there that, we can push out to all kinds of people. And so that's a great way, to do that. But then you also made a really good point earlier. And it reminded me of a quote. I can't remember who said it, but basically it said the best case, or all the cases go to the best marketers, not the best attorneys. And, if you have a good press release system like that, you're getting that national recognition, you're building that credibility. You may not necessarily be the best lawyer, but for those people who really think they are, this is the kind of stuff that you need to do to really solidify that. So you did mention that, having a good topic, having a good reason to submit that or push out that press release, is kind of one of the reasons that they often end up failing. It's just like a newspaper doesn't necessarily care about you hiring someone or anything like that. But, that's one of the reasons. Are there any other big reasons why a lot of press releases end up failing?
I think the other thing is sometimes they write as if it's an article. So the format of it, I've seen so many people use puns in headlines, and it's clever, like New York Post style headlines. Right. And you don't know what the story is about. So their thinking is the journalists will click through to read the press release. And my experience has been they won't. They view press releases on a newswire, and if they don't see the relevance to their industry, they're not curiosity seekers who are going to click on it. They're not your end users. So sometimes writing the press release as if it's an article for an end user, it comes across the wrong way, especially with journalists. If you're utilizing puns and cleverness and that kind of stuff, where they're really just looking for objective third-party content, you can say it in a way that's cool and refreshing. But do I know that it addresses my industry, the beat that I write on, and is it something that I would want to learn more about?
Yeah. It's all about knowing your audience too, and knowing like the medium for which you're publishing it. You're going to write, blog articles on your website a little bit differently because that's going to inject a little bit more of your personality. But this is, you're pushing out to other outlets, who may not share your same tone or style or anything. So you just got to match that. So that's really great advice. So I want to let's start at a small level. Let's say someone's interested in, trying to put in a PR strategy. They want to start local. All right. How can lawyers get even just some free local media coverage?
Right. So it's easy. It's just knowing who writes about companies like yours. If you have a local newspaper, review it, and who writes about law firms. And it may take a few months to figure out when they appear. But if not, you could look at who covers businesses your size, and then just make a call and say, hey, I would like to pitch a story to Bob Jenkins. Could I talk to him? And they'll either put you through. Sometimes they won't, but you could ask for the email address and they'll give it to you. They're not really trying to be like these people that are just inaccessible. They're members of the media, so they deal with interactions. Yeah. And just talk to them. They'll let you know if they're the right person, and then you can pitch them your idea. You can do that with other, like maybe community papers that are not the daily paper. You can do this with, if you have magazines in your area. It also works with TV and radio. The key difference being that you're not reaching the host of a show or segment that you've targeted, but the producer or booker for that show. But again, it might take a little bit of time to say, you may have to quiz some people, say, hey, you ever seen programs that spotlight attorneys from time to time or mention something? And people might say, hey, there's this radio segment that every once in a while talks about issues, and they'll cover, consumer affairs type things, but they will talk about, legal things from occasion. That might be a good place to target, especially if you have something that you're really trying to promote or just educate the, local people about. And so that could be an opportunity. It's really as easy as that. And it's about establishing a relationship. It can, email, phone calls work. It's just whatever naturally they seem to prefer. You can ask them, what's your preference in the future, phone call or email? They'll let you know. In some cases, it might even be Twitter, though I think the local media is probably less of that than your national media. But everybody has a preferred way of contact. And as long as you're coming across as friendly and trying to build rapport, it should be received well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think it should be a standard that you have a strategic media contact, along with your other general referral sources, whether it's a CPA or some sort of mediator or counselor or anything like that. Definitely it's all about relationships. It's such a huge part of any business. So I have one question here before we start to wrap up. In terms of, length, like how long should a press release be when you write it up?
It should be as concise as possible, but long enough to provide context. And for most releases, 400 to 600 words seems more than enough. I have seen an argument for longer ones, and I've sometimes agreed that there was a need for it, but that's very rare, and it's usually on something that's very technical and complicated, and yet the audience is a complicated and technical audience where a long piece makes more sense than just sending them to a web page where you might have technical details. For consumer electronics, I would just say send to a page with tech specs. Don't put it in the press release. But there is some applications where your audience is so niched and focused. Just get the technical information there on the page.
Awesome. Well, Mickie, this has been fantastic. I think I'm out of questions for you. I've learned a lot just in terms of how to craft maybe some future press releases here for Spotlight Branding and maybe for this show. If anyone out there is interested in potentially working with you, I know we do. We've worked with lawyers who have a national audience. I know a lot of them feel like they're super niche down, so their audience is nationwide in terms of getting their case. So how can they get in touch with you to potentially work with you and build some of that out?
Right. I would recommend visiting the website, ereleases.com. You can chat with one of the editors there or give us a phone call. We have no salespeople. It's just editors. And we specialize in helping people with their first releases who may not know how this works. And we're willing to review press releases for you or talk to you about ideas and let you know whether we would be a good fit or not. And all of our social media is on the lower right of the website. I also have a free masterclass on press release strategies I'll make available. It's at ereleases.com/plan, PLAN. It's less than an hour long, but it goes through a lot of strategic types of press releases that may not seem very obvious, but they have a strong track record of getting success, like the survey and study idea that we mentioned before.
Awesome. And I'll make sure that those are in the show notes for everyone out there if you're interested in checking that out. That's going to wrap it up here. I do have one final question for you. It's how we end every show here. And that is, if you had one piece of advice for our lawyers out there, what would it be?
I would say to put yourself out there and don't be afraid of taking the chances. So many people feel I'm not important, I'm not newsworthy enough, and they stay in the shadows. The only reason one person is out there and gets all of the attention is because they put themselves out there. And nothing made them the expert or leadership other than their willingness and ability to get out there. And after a while, they came to be the recognized expert. So go ahead and do it for your your practice, your business. Try to push yourself to get a little more visibility. It doesn't have to be you're the industry expert, but you could be your local community expert on the niche that you serve.
Yeah. I can't agree with that enough. I mean, there's so many adages, if a tree falls in the forest, there's one about a bear in the woods, but, you could be the best lawyer in your town, but if you're not getting yourself out there and you're not making sure that people know it, no one's going to know that. And so great information there. Great insight. I really do appreciate it. That's going to do it for us this week. Continue to rate, review us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Pandora, Spotify, wherever you're listening to the show. We really appreciate the feedback that we're getting. And that's going to do it. Mickie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. To learn more, go to spotlightbranding.com/center stage.